You know how sometimes you just get this feeling uh, that things aren't quite equal?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've wondered if the way someone looks, well, actually impacts how they're treated.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's kind of the territory we're exploring today,
Hmm.
this idea of pretty privilege.
Okay.
Put simply, it's about the advantages, some people seem to get just because they're considered attractive.
Right. Perks just for looking good.
Exactly. It's something you might have noticed maybe in your own life or even experienced yourself.
For sure. And our starting point for this deep dive is actually a really engaging chat between two friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's on the LEP Learn English podcast YouTube channel. They were talking about a viral article, sort of sharing their own thoughts on whether this pretty privileged thing is, real.
Interesting. So our goal today is to unpack this concept, basically using their discussion as a roadmap.
That's the plan. We want to really get into whether this so-called privilege exists and how it might influence different parts of our lives.
Like work, social stuff.
Exactly. Careers, interactions, the whole deal. Think of this as like a shortcut to grasping the core ideas without having to wade through tons of articles.
Got it. Okay, so these two friends on the podcast, they immediately jumped on this idea that good looks can bring special benefits. What were their initial sort of reactions?
Well, what's fascinating is how quickly they both agreed it felt fundamentally unfair.
Right.
They both felt really strongly that, skills and personality, that's what should matter more.
Not just how you look.
Precisely. And that really sets up why this whole concept can spark such strong feelings. It feels inherently unjust.
It really does tap into that basic sense of fairness, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And one of the first places they thought this might show up is the job market.
Oh, yeah.
One of them mentioned reading that people considered attractive are supposedly more likely to get hired or even get raises.
Right. That came up.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like thinking about your own workplace
Mm.
or maybe hiring decisions.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen anything that, hints at that kind of bias?
That's a really interesting angle. And it touches on something psychologists call the halo effect.
Yeah, halo effects.
Yeah, it's this idea that our positive impression of someone in one area, maybe their appearance, well, it can sort of spill over.
Spill over. How so?
It positively influences how we judge them in other totally unrelated areas, like how competent we think they are or how likable.
Oh, okay. So an attractive candidate might unconsciously seem more capable.
Or just a better fit, yeah. Even if there's no actual evidence for it, it's a bias.
That halo effect really clarifies it. Okay, so moving beyond just jobs, they also talked about social life.
The social side.
It sounds like people seen as attractive often just kind of naturally get more attention
Yeah,
and maybe have more friends.
that was part of their conversation, yeah.
They even mentioned how strangers might be, noticeably friendlier to good-looking people.
Like they get a bit of a head start in social situations.
Yeah, exactly. A head start. Do you ever observe that yourself?
Well, what's interesting to think about there is how it could create this self-reinforcing cycle.
A cycle.
Yeah, I mean, if attractive people get more positive social feedback, say, from a young age, could
Mhm.
that maybe help them develop more confidence, become more outgoing?
And then that confidence leads to even more positive interactions.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating dynamic to consider how early experiences might shape things later on.
It really is. But their conversation didn't just focus on the benefits. They also looked at the flip side,
Right, the downside.
the potential negative impact on people who, don't fit those conventional beauty standards.
Mm.
The feeling of being constantly overlooked came up. And
Yeah.
you could just imagine how that might, you know, wear down someone's self-esteem over time.
That's such a crucial point. There's this thing in social psychology, social comparison theory.
Okay.
Basically, it suggests that we figure out how we're doing by comparing ourselves to others.
That
So if you're constantly seeing these super idealized images of beauty everywhere, and maybe you're not getting that same positive attention yourself,
it can make you feel inadequate.
unfortunately, yeah, it can contribute to feeling less worthy if you don't match those narrow standards. It's tough.
And interestingly, they pointed out it's not necessarily all easy for those who do benefit either.
Oh, how so?
They talked about this potential trap, like a pressure to constantly maintain their looks.
Ah, right. To keep up appearances, literally.
Yeah, like being on this treadmill, needing to live up to certain standards all the time. Does that ring true?
Absolutely. And what's interesting there is how that constant pressure could become a real source of anxiety.
Yeah, I can see that.
The need to always look a certain way, to hold on to that perceived advantage. It could be exhausting, maybe even lead to a fear of losing it if their looks change.
That's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
Then the conversation shifted to, well, a really powerful influence in all this, the media.
Oh, yeah, the media's role is huge.
They highlighted how we're just bombarded with images of, perfect, flawless people,
Constantly.
and how that inevitably shapes how we see ourselves. I mean, just scroll through social media or turn on the TV.
It's nonstop, isn't it? And it really highlights the importance of what you might call media literacy.
Being aware of how fake or staged it often is.
Exactly. Being aware that these images are constructed, curated. The friends made a great point about how even regular people tend to only post their absolute best pictures online.
Right. Which creates this totally unrealistic idea of what people actually look like day to day.
It sets an often unattainable benchmark for beauty. Yeah. Skews our whole perception.
It really can. But they also talked about ways we could maybe shift things, some potential solutions.
Yeah, they did look towards hope, which is good.
Increased awareness was a big one, just talking about it like we are now.
Bringing it out in the open.
They also suggested schools could maybe play a role, teaching things like self-acceptance, respect for different kinds of beauty. What do you think about that?
That brings up a really important point about education, doesn't it? And how we learn about ourselves and others.
Yeah.
I mean, integrating discussions about body image, about media literacy, about how diverse beauty really is, putting that in the curriculum could be so valuable.
Help kids build healthier self-perceptions early on.
Exactly. Challenge those narrow ideals from a young age, maybe.
And they also hope the media itself might evolve, move away from focusing so much on one specific type of perfection.
Showcase more real people, maybe, with a wider range of looks.
Yeah. The underlying message seemed to be that beauty is diverse. It shouldn't be just one thing.
Right, and that everyone deserves to feel confident and valued, regardless of appearance.
Definitely.
And what's interesting there is the potential for, a positive feedback loop.
How do you mean?
Well, if the media does start showing a broader range of people, could that help expand society's view of beauty?
And maybe lessen the pressure to conform to those super narrow standards.
Possibly. It's something to hope for, anyway.
They also took a moment to define some key words, which is always useful.
Yeah, helps get everyone on the same page.
Attractive was defined as, pleasing to look at or listen to, causing interest. Basically, good-looking, pretty.
Standard definition.
Then self-esteem, which is that really crucial feeling of liking and respecting yourself.
And how that can be influenced by how attractive you feel or think others see you.
Exactly. Then they mentioned overlook.
Which is just failing to notice someone.
And how that might happen more often to people not seen as conventionally attractive.
Sadly, yes.
Also maintain in the sense of the effort needed to keep up an attractive appearance.
That pressure we talked about.
And finally, biases. Those often unconscious preferences we might have.
Like tending to give more attention to people we find attractive without really thinking about why.
Right. Having those terms clear really helps. They then went a bit deeper, asking some more complex questions.
Okay.
Like, does pretty privilege affect friendships or romantic relationships?
Oh, interesting. What did they suggest?
Well, it seems like it potentially can, maybe leading to jealousy or insecurity, and possibly making it harder for those seen as less good-looking to form connections. Because maybe their other qualities get overlooked at first. Have you considered that?
Well, if you think about how relationships often start, there's usually some initial attraction, right?
True.
So, yeah, in that context, pretty privilege could sometimes overshadow the chance to build deeper connections based on personality or shared values.
So it could create challenges for both sides. Those who get the initial attention and those who feel unseen.
It seems possible, yeah. Real challenges in forming genuine bonds sometimes.
Another really vital point they raised was culture.
Ah, yes, cultural differences.
How what's considered pretty isn't universal. It varies, sometimes a lot, between cultures.
Absolutely.
Someone seen as really attractive in one place might not be viewed the same way elsewhere. What does that tell us?
It's a crucial reminder that beauty is, well, very much a social construct.
Meaning it's defined by society.
Largely, yes. What's fascinating is how specific cultural norms, and especially media within that culture, really shape those beauty standards.
And that influences who gets the privilege in that particular place.
Exactly. It's context dependent.
They also sort of summarize the real-world effects again. Easier time getting hired, potentially, better treatment from strangers, more attention generally.
The advantages.
But they also highlighted that potential downside again, how it can sometimes spark insecurity in others.
Right, those who feel like their own looks might be holding them back.
It's kind of a paradox, isn't it?
It really shows that pretty privilege isn't just a simple one-way street.
Yeah.
While it offers advantages, it could also create discomfort, maybe even guilt for those who get it, especially if they recognize it's unfair.
And like you said, it can contribute to feelings of inadequacy in others. It's complex.
Very much so.
And then they touched on the underlying bias that seems to drive it all.
The root cause.
Yeah. Research apparently suggests we tend to link beauty with other good qualities.
The halo effect again, basically.
So if we see someone attractive, we might just automatically assume they're also, I don't know, friendly, smart, successful.
Our brains take a shortcut. Assume good looks mean good everything else. Why do you think we do that?
Well, what's interesting about these kinds of unconscious biases is just how deeply ingrained they can be.
Hard to shake off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be genuinely difficult to notice consciously that we might be treating someone differently just based on how they look.
Even when we intellectually know that looks don't really tell us about someone's character or abilities.
It's definitely tough to admit to ourselves. They wrapped up by stressing that, look, we probably can't just eliminate pretty privilege entirely.
That would be difficult, yeah.
But becoming more aware of our own potential biases towards attractive people, that's a really crucial first step.
Just noticing it in ourselves.
And ultimately, they emphasized focusing on character, on actions.
Rather than just physical appearance.
Exactly.
That really reinforces the idea that, okay, initial attraction might play a role in first impressions,
Okay.
but when it comes down to building real relationships or making fair judgments, we really should prioritize those deeper qualities, what truly defines someone.
And like they said, that awareness is the foundation for actually changing our own behavior.
Mm-hmm. Making conscious choices.
So to sort of bring it all together, this deep dive into that LEP Learn English podcast chat really underlines that pretty privilege seems to be, well, a real thing.
A tangible phenomenon, yeah, with significant effects.
Affecting lots of different parts of life.
Yeah.
And it seems to stem from these really deep societal biases, linking attractiveness with other good stuff.
And as the friends in that discussion pointed out so clearly, just cultivating more awareness of these biases in ourselves.
Harnessing them.
Yeah, and
Right.
encouraging self-acceptance for everyone, promoting a much broader, more inclusive idea of what beauty even means. Those are all really vital steps.
Steps to challenge the negative fallout from pretty privilege.
Exactly.
So, thinking about how deeply ingrained these visual biases can be. Here's a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
What small, conscious effort could you make today to maybe challenge your own assumptions about someone based just on how they look?
Like what?
Well, maybe taking an extra moment to really listen to someone you might normally, I don't know, tune out. Or deliberately focusing on someone's character, their ideas, rather than just their appearance.
A small shift in focus.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind as you go about your day.